The whole city saw him break my heart in a viral prank. A week later, the whole city saw his perfectly produced black and white apology. I took him back, desperate to believe the performance. But as I sat across from him in a silent cafe, watching his thumb scroll through the like count on his apology post, I finally understood the truth. I wasn't his girlfriend. I was just his content. The coffee grinder screamed. I flinched, but Ethan didn't look up from his phone. His thumb just moved. Up, pause, up. The blue light hollowed out his face, making him a stranger. We were at the grind, the cafe so trendy it hurt, and we hadn't spoken in 10 minutes. This silence felt heavier than the fight that almost ended us. This was the silence that came after, the one that proved the fight had changed everything. A girl at the table next to us laughed, a loud, sharp sound that snapped me back 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago. The cafeteria. The smell was processed cheese and industrial floor cleaner. The noise was a loud, steady roar of 500 teenagers eating at the same time. I was carrying my tray. My best friend, Chloe, was next to me, talking about her chemistry test. I just don't get why we need to know she started to say, but she stopped. Her eyes went wide. I looked up. Ethan was standing on a table. His friend Leo was beside him, phone held high. "Maya!" Ethan shouted. The roaring noise of the cafeteria died. Every head turned. I froze, my plastic tray suddenly heavy. "Maya, we need to talk!" he yelled. I could feel the heat climbing my neck. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "I can't do this anymore," he projected, his voice bouncing off the high ceiling. "It's over!" A collective gasp. I just stood there. I could see Leo's phone. The little red live icon was glowing in the corner. My stomach dropped. "Ethan, stop," I said, my voice shaking. "Get down." "It's not me, it's you," he said, and I could hear the fake emotion in his voice. He was performing. "I'm just done." He jumped off the table. Leo kept filming, walking backward to keep me in the frame. I could see my own face, pale and confused, reflected in his sunglasses. Someone snickered. Then another. A few phones came out, little blue screens rising above the tables like lighters at a concert. My eyes burned. The heat in my face was unbearable. I looked down at my tray. A plain hamburger, a carton of milk, and some apple slices. I dropped it. The clatter was deafening in the quiet room. The tray hit the floor and skidded. The milk carton burst open, splashing white across the dirty tiles and onto my shoes. I turned and ran. The sound of their laughter, mixed with Ethan's loud, false, "Maya, wait!" I followed me all the way down the hall. By fifth period, it was everywhere. Cafeteria collapse. My face red and twisted. The spilled milk. Ethan's dramatic, tabletop breakup. Chloe found me in the back row of the library, my head buried in my arms. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just sat down and pushed her water bottle across the table. "He's an idiot, Maya," she said, her voice low. "A complete, utter idiot. The public shaming was immediate, but it wasn't for me. It was for him." The comments under the video were brutal. Clout chaser. Emotional terrorist. Who hurts someone like that for views? His brand was taking a hit. A week later, exactly 1 week after I ran from the cafeteria, the grand apology tour began. First, the video. It showed up in everyone's feed. Ethan, sitting on his bedroom floor, filmed in black and white. He looked right into the camera, his eyes glossy. He talked about learning and growth and not realizing the impact. He never used the word prank. He said he misjudged the moment. Then, my locker. I walked in on Monday morning and it was covered, not with flowers, with printed out screenshots of our old happy text messages. "You're my everything," one read. "Can't stop thinking about you," said another. He had written, "I miss this," in big silver marker over all of them. Chloe rolled her eyes. He's just posting his apology to a different wall. The grand finale was that night. It was raining. I was in my room trying to do homework when I heard a tap, tap, tap. Not at my door. At my window, I pulled back the curtain. He was standing in my mom's ruined flower bed, soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead. He wasn't holding a speaker. He was just holding one, perfect rose. He didn't shout. He just stood there in the rain, shivering, looking up at me. "It's content, Maya," Chloe's voice said in my head. "The apology is just more content." I knew she was right. I was tired. I was so tired of the staring in the hallways, the whispers. I just wanted it to stop. I wanted to go back to before. I unlocked the window and slid it open. He climbed inside, dripping rainwater onto my bedroom carpet. He held out the rose. "I messed up, Maya," he whispered. His teeth were chattering. "I'm nothing without you." He looked so genuine, so cold and sorry, so I took him back, which is why we were here, at the grind. 2 weeks after the incident, 1 week after the apology. He had promised to be present. No phones, just us. A real date. He'd looked me in the eyes and promised. In the cafe, my coffee was getting cold. I watched his thumb. Scroll, scroll, scroll. I cleared my throat. "Ethan." He held up one finger, his eyes still glued to the screen. "1 sec, babe." His voice was distant. "Just checking the analytics on the apology post." He paid for my coffee, the one I hadn't touched, and we walked out of the grind. The city noise, the buses hissing and the distant sirens felt normal. It was a relief after the quiet tension inside. As soon as the cafe door clicked shut, Ethan's phone disappeared into his back pocket. He grabbed my hand. His palm was warm and dry, and he laced his fingers through mine. "I'm sorry about that," he said. He sounded like the old Ethan, the one I'd missed. "It's just the brand. It's work. I have to stay on top of it. You get that, right?" I nodded even though I didn't. Not really. "You promised no phones." "I know. And I'm stopping now." He pulled me to a stop on the sidewalk. He used his free hand to tip my chin up. "From now on, it's just you and me." "I promise." He kissed me. It was a real kiss, not a performance. It was soft and slow, and for a second I let myself believe it. I let myself sink into the feeling of being wanted, of being his again. The relief was so strong it made my knees weak. Maybe we were going to be okay. The next few days were good. He was true to his word. He walked me to every class, his arm around my shoulder. When we sat at lunch, his phone stayed in his bag. Chloe watched us from across the cafeteria, her expression unreadable. I gave her a small, hopeful smile. She didn't smile back. That Friday, we were at my place, supposedly watching a movie. My parents were out. We were on the sofa, a big bowl of popcorn between us. The movie was some action thing. Cars were exploding. People were shouting. I was leaning against his shoulder, finally relaxed. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I ignored it. Then his pocket lit up. A pale blue glow seeped through the denim of his jeans. He shifted slowly, trying not to disturb me. He slid his hand into his pocket and angled the screen away. "Who is it?" I asked, sitting up. "No one. Just a notification." His eyes were fixed on the screen, his thumb scrolling. "Ethan." 1 second. I waited. The car chase on the screen ended. The characters started talking. I wasn't listening. I was watching the tiny movements of Ethan's thumb. Scroll, pause, scroll. He wasn't texting, he was reading. Are you reading comments?" I asked. My voice sounded small. He glanced up, his expression defensive. "It's just, people are being really positive, Maya. About us. About how I, owned up to it." He turned the screen toward me. It was his black and white apology video. The view count had tripled. The comment section was endless. "This is real growth. Takes a real man to admit he was wrong. You two are my favorite couple. So glad you're back." He was smiling. "See, they get it. They see how much I care about you." I looked from the screen to his face. He seemed so proud. He wasn't looking at the video of his apology. He was looking at the reaction to his apology. I stood up. The popcorn bowl tipped, and a few kernels spilled onto the rug. "I'm going to get some water," I said. The next night was the party. Jason Miller's house. The first big social event since the incident. My stomach was in knots all day. "Do we have to go?" I asked, standing in front of my mirror. "Yes." "We have to go," Ethan said, zipping up his hoodie. He came up behind me. "We have to show everyone we're fine. That we're better than ever. It'll stop the whispering." He had a point. I was so tired of the whispering. The party was exactly what I expected. The house was packed. The air was hot and sticky, smelling of sweat and spilled beer. A heavy bass line throbbed through the floor, vibrating in my teeth. It felt like the cafeteria all over again. Every time we moved, conversation stopped. People's eyes followed us. I saw a girl point at me and whisper to her friend. Ethan was in his element. He waved. He high-fived people. He kept his arm locked around my waist, pulling me close every time someone looked at us. It didn't feel protective. It felt like I was a prop. "See? She's here. She's fine. We're fine." After an hour, I couldn't breathe. "I need some air," I said, pulling at his hand. I led him through the kitchen and out the sliding glass door to the back porch. It was quieter out here, cooler. I could hear crickets under the sound of the distant music. I wrapped my arms around myself and looked out at the dark yard. "What's wrong?" he asked. He sounded annoyed. "It's just... everyone is staring at us." My voice cracked. "It just brings it all back." "What happened?" "I feel anxious, Ethan. I feel like that day." He was quiet for a moment. He stepped closer. "Hey," he said, his voice soft now. "Look at me." I turned. His face was hard to see in the dim light from the kitchen window. "You are so strong," he said. "You're handling all this. You're amazing." I wanted to believe him. I leaned my head against his chest. I could feel his heart beating, steady and calm. He held me. Then he moved one hand. I heard the sound of his phone unlocking. "What are you doing?" I asked, pulling back. He held the phone up. The flash was blinding. I yelped, covering my eyes. Spots danced in my vision. "Ethan, stop!" Sorry. He was tapping on the screen, his face lit up by the glow. "You just looked... I don't know. You looked so real just then. So vulnerable. It was beautiful." "Don't post that," I said. My heart was starting to pound. That same cafeteria feeling. "Please, don't be silly. It's a great picture." He smiled, but he wasn't looking at me. He was typing. "People love this stuff. It's authentic." I just stared at him. Authentic. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look. I knew what it was. A notification. A tag. I pulled it out. There it was. My face caught in the harsh flash. My eyes wide and scared. The caption, "My strong girl, weathering the storm. So proud of her." My hands were shaking. I texted Chloe. "He did it again." Her reply was instant. What did he do? Before I could type, a new text message popped up. It was from Ethan. He was standing right in front of me, but he was texting me. "Babe, look. That post is already blowing up, and a new sponsor just DM'd me. The one from that pop-up event downtown. They love the party post. They want to send us, for free. It's a date." He finally looked up from his screen, his eyes bright with excitement. "How cool is that?" He said, "Our first official collab." The pop-up was called Aura. It was in an empty warehouse downtown that had been painted white and filled with neon lights. Chloe was on video call, propped up on my dresser, while I tried to figure out what to wear. "So, let me get this straight," Chloe said, her voice tinny through the phone speaker. "Your apology date is a paid sponsorship for a new energy drink?" I pulled a blue sweater over my head. "He says it's not a paid sponsorship. We just get free stuff and it'll be fun. Maya, fun." Chloe leaned into her camera. "Fun is going to the movies. Fun is splitting a pizza. Fun is not being a prop in his next authentic brand experience. He's using you to clean up his image." I didn't have an answer for that. I just looked at my reflection. My hair was flat. I looked tired. "He promised he'd be present," I said, more to myself than to her. "He said it's a date." Chloe just sighed. "Text me if he makes you hashtag anything." Then she hung up. The Aura event was blinding. We walked in, and the air hummed with electronic music. The smell was sharp, like artificial berry flavor and hot plastic. White walls were covered in the brand's logo, a swirling purple circle. "This is sick, right?" Ethan yelled over the music. He was already filming, panning his phone across the room. The room was full of other people who looked just like him. All of them were holding their phones, talking to their screens. Girls in perfect makeup posed against a wall made entirely of the shiny purple cans. A woman with a clipboard and a tight smile hurried over. "Ethan, so glad you could make it. Here are your wristbands. The main photo op is by the recharge station in the back. And feel free to grab all the product you want." Ethan smiled, a bright, wide smile I hadn't seen directed at me all day. "Awesome. Thanks so much for having us. This is my girlfriend, Maya." The woman glanced at me and nodded, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Great, well, tag us in everything." She hurried away. "Come on," Ethan said, grabbing my hand. He wasn't looking at me. He was scanning the room, his eyes bright. "Let's go get a drink." We walked over to a bar where they were handing out free cans. Ethan took 2. He handed me one and then immediately held his phone up, pointing the front-facing camera at us. "Ready?" he asked. "For what?" "A toast." He bumped his can against mine and started recording. "What's up, everyone? We are live at the Aura launch, and it is amazing. So stoked to be here with—" He nudged me. "Hi," I said to the camera. "We're checking out the new flavor. You guys gotta try this." He took a sip, and his face lit up with that same bright public smile. "That is incredible, so smooth, so much energy." He held the phone toward me. I took a small sip. It tasted like cough syrup and static. "It's sweet," I said. "She loves it," he shouted. He ended the recording and immediately started tapping, adding filters and tags. For the next hour, I followed him. I was a shadow in his spotlight. We went to the recharge station, which was just a white sofa under a purple neon sign. He had me sit next to him. He put his arm around me. He kissed my temple. He took a picture. He posted it. He didn't talk to me. He talked at me for his audience. "Isn't this amazing, babe? Maya's having the best time. So glad we could share this." I watched him. His eyes weren't on me. They were on his screen, checking the likes, checking the comments. We were standing near the DJ booth, the music pounding in my chest. I felt invisible. He had just finished filming a 30-second review of the lighting. "Ethan," I said, my voice tight. "Hold on, babe. I have to upload this. The signal in here is terrible." "Ethan." I tugged on his sleeve. He let out an annoyed breath and looked at me. "What? What's wrong?" "This isn't a date," he blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Of course it is. We're out, we're together. This place is cool. We got free stuff. This is work," I said. My voice was shaking and I hated it. "This is work for you. I'm just here for the pictures." His face hardened. "That's not true. This is a huge opportunity. This sponsor is a big deal. I thought you'd be happy for me. For us? Us?" I couldn't stop the word from coming out. It sounded bitter. "Ethan, that night at the party, you posted that picture of me. After I asked you not to. I told you it was a great shot. No, it was like the cafeteria all over again. You saw me. You saw I was upset, and your first thought was to film it. I was showing people you were strong, Maya. It was positive. But was it true?" I finally looked him right in the eye. The purple lights flashing across his face, making him look like a stranger again. "When you apologized, when you stood in the rain, were you sorry because you hurt me? Or were you just sorry everyone saw?" The question hung in the air between us. The bass dropped and the music got louder. Ethan just stared at me. He genuinely looked confused. The question didn't compute. He pulled out his phone. He unlocked it and opened his social media app. He turned the screen to me. "Maya, look," he said, his voice earnest. He pointed to the graph on his analytics page. "Look at the numbers. Our engagement has never been higher. People love us. We're winning, babe." I just stared at him. The purple light of the Aura logo flashed on his face. He was smiling, his eyes bright, waiting for me to be happy too. "We're winning," he'd said. I didn't have any words. My throat felt thick. I just turned and walked away. I pushed through the crowd, past the white couches and the walls of purple cans. I didn't look back to see if he was following. The cold night air hit my face as I shoved the warehouse door open. It felt good. I could breathe again. I walked to the corner, away from the pounding music, and called for a rideshare. Headlights swept across the street. Ethan came out of the building. He wasn't running. He was just walking, his phone in his hand. "Maya, what are you doing?" he called out. He sounded irritated, not worried. "My ride's almost here," I said. "What?" "I was going to drive you home. We were supposed to be here." "No," I said. "You were." "I was just here." He sighed, a frustrated sound. "Look, I don't know why you're mad. The sponsor loved us. This is a good night, Maya. You're ruining it." A car pulled up, its hazard lights flashing. "My ride. I'm going home," I said. I got in the car and shut the door. He just stood on the curb, phone in his hand, lit by the purple neon sign. He didn't ask me to stay. He just watched me leave. The car was silent on the way home, just the quiet clicks of the turn signal. I watched the city lights pass by. They looked blurry. When I got to my room, I took off my shoes and let them drop on the floor. I sat on my bed. My phone buzzed. It was him, a text. "You home?" I didn't answer. Another buzz. "You're overreacting. It was a party." "That's it. Another." "Maya, come on. Just text me back." I turned the phone over and put it on silent. I sat in the dark for a long time. My screen lit up again. This time it was Chloe, a video call. I wiped my face and answered. Her face filled the screen. She was in her pajamas, her hair in a messy bun. She took one look at me. "He did it again, didn't he?" I just nodded. He showed me his analytics, Chloe, as a reason, like I was supposed to be impressed. "Maya," she said, her voice gentle. "He's not a boyfriend. He's a creative director, and you're his unpaid talent." "He just doesn't get it," I whispered. "He doesn't see the difference between what's real and what's for his feed." "Because for him, there is no difference," Chloe said. "His feed is what's real. Everything else is just B-roll." We were quiet for a minute. "I just miss him," I said. "The person he was before." "I know," Chloe said. "I miss him too." We hung up. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. For 2 days, we didn't talk. I saw him at school, surrounded by his friends, laughing. He glanced at me in the hall, but I looked away first. His feed was full of posts from the Aura event. Pictures of him. Pictures of the cans. The picture of us on the white couch, his arm around me. "Best night with my girl," the caption said. My phone buzzed with notifications. People tagging me. People saying we were goals. I felt sick. On the third night, a Wednesday, my phone lit up. A new text from Ethan. "I know things have been weird." I sat up, my heart doing a stupid, hopeful little jump. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said." I held my breath. "You're right. I've been distracted. I lost track of what's important. I lost track of us." My eyes started to burn. This was it. This was the apology. The real one. I want to fix it. A real date. No sponsors, no phones, no posts. Just you and me. I read the line 3 times. No phones. Meet me at the Overlook tomorrow. 8 p.m. The place we had our first kiss. The Overlook. It was a small park on a hill that looked out over the entire city. We went there after a football game, almost a year ago. We had sat on the cold metal bench, sharing a bad cup of hot chocolate from a machine, and he'd kissed me. It was quiet. It was dark. No one else was there. My fingers hovered over the screen. Chloe's voice was in my head. "He's a creative director." But he said, "No phones." He remembered our spot. A new text came through before I could reply. "We need a reset." Yes, that's what we needed. A reset. A way to go back to before. Before the cafeteria. Before the analytics. Before I became a hashtag, I typed back one word. Okay. The bus let me off at the bottom of the hill. The air was cold and clear, and I pulled my jacket tight around me. I could feel my phone in my pocket. I had 17 unread messages. 3 from my mom, asking when I'd be home. 14 from Chloe, all variations of Maya, "Don't go." I ignored them. I walked up the winding asphalt path. The sound of the highway faded behind me, replaced by the wind in the trees and the crunch of my own footsteps. At the top, the city was spread out, a grid of endless glittering lights. It was quiet. It smelled like damp earth and cold metal. He was already there. Ethan was sitting on our bench, the green paint peeling off the metal slats. He wasn't on his phone. His hands were stuffed in his pockets, and he was just looking at the view. He looked small. He heard me approach and stood up. "Maya." His voice was quiet, not his public, projecting voice. "Hey," I said. My own voice was thin, and I hated it. He didn't move to hug me or kiss me. He just stood there looking awkward. It felt more real than any of his apologies. "You said no phones," I said. It was the only thing I could think of. "No phones," he confirmed. He took his hands out of his pockets to show they were empty. "It's off, in my bag." I promise I believed him. I sat down on one end of the bench. He sat on the other. For a full minute, we just sat in the cold, like we did a year ago. The silence was different this time. It wasn't the angry silence from the cafe. It was just quiet. "I've been thinking," he said, looking down at his shoes. "A lot about what you said at that aura thing." My hands tensed in my lap. "You were right," he said. "When you left, I was mad. And then I went home, and I was looking at that picture. The one I posted from the party? The one you hated." He turned to look at me. His face was just shapes in the dark, with the city lights far behind him. I realized I was looking at the picture of you, more than I had looked at you. My heart did a painful, hopeful flip. "Chloe's right, isn't she?" he asked. "About me being a creative director, or whatever." He said it. He actually heard us. "I don't want to be that, Maya," he said. His voice was earnest. That's not us. This is us. This bench, this view. This is real." He slid across the bench, closing the space between us. He took my hand. His was freezing cold. "I want this back," he whispered. "I want a reset. For real, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Maya. For the cafeteria. For the party. For all of it." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since I dropped that milk carton. It came out as a shaky white cloud in the cold air. "Me too," I whispered back. He smiled. It was a real smile, small and uncertain. It reached his eyes. "Good," he said. "Good, I'm so glad." He squeezed my hand. I want to do this right. I want to make it official. Our new start." "What do you mean?" He let go of my hand and turned to the backpack resting by his feet. The one I hadn't noticed. "I've been planning this all day," he said. His voice was changing. The quiet was gone. The old excitement, the project excitement, was coming back. "It's got to be perfect." He unzipped the bag. I leaned forward, thinking he was going to pull out that old thermos of bad hot chocolate we shared. He pulled out something black and metal. My stomach went cold. It had 3 thin, jointed legs. He pulled them out, and they clicked into place. It was a tripod, a small one for a phone. "Ethan?" My voice was flat. "It's for the reset," he said. He was busy, setting the tripod on the low stone wall in front of our bench. He fiddled with the angle, making sure the city skyline was centered. You said no phones?" I whispered. "I know." He reached back into his bag and pulled out his phone. He clicked it into the tripod's grip. He tapped the screen, and his face was lit up by that familiar blue light. "It's not for me, Maya," he said, his eyes on the screen, framing the shot. "It's for us. It's for everyone who's been following our story. They've been so invested. They deserve to see this." He looked at me, his face glowing, his eyes bright with his performance. "Let's go live," he said, smiling. "People love a happy ending." "Let's go live," he said. "People love a happy ending." He wasn't asking. He was telling me. I just stared at him. He was so happy. His eyes were bright, his face full of purpose. This was the most animated I had seen him all week. He wasn't sad or sorry. He was excited. He was in his element. He tapped the screen. A small red icon appeared in the top corner. It said, "Live." A counter next to it popped up. I watched the number climb. 240, 319. Then the comments started. A fast, scrolling river of text flooding the bottom of the screen. "Ethan! You're live! Where are you? That view is sick. I'm first." Ethan's whole body changed. He sat up straighter. His smile became wider, brighter. He looked right into the small, dark lens, and his voice filled with that warm, public sound I knew so well. The sound from his apology video. "Hey, everyone," he said. "What's up? Thanks for joining me." He was looking at them, the hundreds of nameless people behind the glass. He wasn't looking at me. "I know," he continued, his voice dropping. "I know things have been a little crazy lately. And I've been doing a lot of learning, a lot of growing." The comments flew by. "We love you, Ethan. Growth is everything. You're a good man." And he said, "I wanted to bring you all to a place that's, well, it's really special to me and to Maya." He gestured a wide, open-handed sweep toward the city lights. It was a good shot. He had framed it perfectly. "This is the overlook," he said. "This is where we had our first kiss." The comments exploded. "OMG, Stoop. That is so romantic. Is Maya there? Where is she? Show us Maya." I watched him read them. I watched his eyes scan the text. I wasn't on a date. I was in a production meeting. I was on set. The camera was rolling. I looked at the scrolling usernames. JBaller22, ChloeFan8, user 515099. This was his audience. This was his real relationship. These were the people he was talking to. These were the people he needed. I was just the prop he used to get their attention. The truth, the one I had been trying not to see since that day in the cafeteria, settled over me. It wasn't loud. It was cold and heavy. He didn't just abandon me that one time for a video. He abandons me every time. He abandons me every second he chooses the screen. He abandoned me at the party for a post. He abandoned me at the cafe to check his analytics. He abandoned me at the Aura event for a sponsor, and he was abandoning me right now. He wasn't apologizing to me. He was apologizing to them. I wasn't his girlfriend. I was his co-star. This wasn't a reset. This wasn't an apology. This was just content. It was the next episode. His smile tightened. He had seen the comments asking for me. He glanced at me, a quick, annoyed look. It wasn't the look of a boyfriend. It was the look of a director whose actor had missed her cue. "Babe," he whispered, a hiss through his teeth. His smile was still on, but his eyes were hard. "Come on. Get in the shot." He patted the spot on the bench next to him, the spot perfectly centered in the frame. I didn't move. I just watched him. The comments were getting impatient. "Where is she? Did you lie? Is this fake?" Panic flashed in his eyes. This was not going according to his plan. His brand was on the line. "Maya," he said, his voice strained, but still trying to sound romantic for the microphone. He reached out and grabbed my hand. His grip was tight. He tugged. "Come on," he said. "People are watching." His grip was tight, his fingers digging into my hand. "People are watching," he'd said. I looked down at his knuckles, white from the pressure. I looked at the little red light on the phone screen. It glowed in the dark. It looked like an eye. I looked at the scrolling usernames. User 90210. Ethan Fan 1. This is awkward. Where is she? They were all he could see. I looked back at his face. He was smiling at the lens, a big, bright, fake smile. But his eyes, his real eyes, were darting to me, wide with panic. He needed this to work. He needed me to play my part, and in that second, I finally saw it. The truth. It wasn't that he loved his phone more than me. It was that I didn't really exist to him at all, except as a character in the story he was telling his phone. He didn't need a girlfriend. He needed a co-star. He didn't need a relationship. He needed engagement. All his emotions, his grand apology in the rain, his pride in me at the party, his reset on this bench, it was all just a script. A script he was writing for them. I couldn't unsee it. "Maya, please," he hissed. The smile didn't move. "Just sit here. Just wave. Just smile." He tugged my arm harder. I let my eyes meet his. I didn't say anything. I simply unlaced my fingers from his. His hand, empty now, hung in the air between us. His smile faltered. He stared at me, his mask finally cracking. "I know," I said. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. He blinked. "What?" "I know they're watching." I stood up from the bench. "What are you doing?" He scrambled, his voice rising, forgetting the live feed. Maya, sit down. What are you doing? You're out of frame! They can't see you. The comments were probably exploding. I didn't look. I turned and took one step away from the bench, away from the tripod, away from the small, glowing blue square that held his entire world. Maya, he yelled. His voice was no longer a performance. It was thin and real and terrified. You're ruining it. People are watching. Maya, wait. I stopped. I looked back at him. He was alone on the bench, caught in the harsh light of his own phone, his face a mask of confusion and anger. He was a performer left alone on a stage, the audience watching, and his co-star had just walked off. Let them, I said. I turned my back to the light and walked away. I walked down the dark, winding path. I didn't run, like I did in the cafeteria. My footsteps were steady on the pavement. I could hear his voice, high and distant, calling my name, but I didn't stop. When I reached the bottom of the hill, the sound of the highway was a steady hum. The bus stop was empty. I looked at the city lights. They weren't blurry anymore. They were just lights, clear and separate. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was probably him. It was probably Chloe. It didn't matter. I left it there. I thought about what I'd told myself, that I took him back, but I couldn't unsee the truth. I did take him back. I had tried, but the truth was that there was no one to take back. The Ethan I missed, the one who sat on that bench with me a year ago, was gone. Or maybe he had never been there at all. The story was over. A bus hissed to a stop in front of me. The doors opened. I got on. As I sat down, I looked out the window. The silence in the bus wasn't heavy like the cafe. It wasn't the sound of abandonment. It was just quiet. I realized I did go up that hill to rescue someone from the wreckage. It just wasn't him. It was me.